Good morning and welcome to Crusher Trading Live. This is your host, Will V, and today we're going to do the recap show for Friday, March 7th, 2025 here, and actually it's for March 6th yesterday. We had quite a few Crush It trading setups take place yesterday. We tried to get in a couple of them. We'll get into those here shortly, but if you want to learn a get up and go strategy, do me a favor and click the like button, and if you haven't subscribed, do me a favor and subscribe now, and you'll get daily alerts on the Crush It trading setups that we take almost every single day. All right, so let's start out with Apple, and yes, we did have a Crush It zone set up on Apple yesterday. Now remember, in the beginning of the day before 9:45, if you get these Crush It zones, they don't really pay as well. The IV is kind of high and the IV starts to drop throughout the morning. So really the best Crush It zone trades come after 9:45, right around 10 o'clock is when we should get most of the really good paying ones. But we did have one here on, let's start with Apple. That was Palantir. So Apple here, we had one right away at, what time was this one at? 9:35. And a nice move to the downside. We made it back down to the zero line. So this was a pretty good trade yesterday on Apple. Good call out on Anthony, who called this one out. Let's see here. This one paid about $1.70. Now, like I said, it happened quite early. So when they happen early like that, yes, you make some money, but it's not as much as you would make as if you were to take this trade maybe at about 10 o'clock. Okay, like I said, the IV is usually high in the open, and it starts to drop down, so you start losing some of that that premium price. All right, so the trade here, so basically it's the same as always, you guys. I'm going to take the candles off the 10-second here on Apple so you can see this, and I'll show you a couple other things here also. Let me get this up here. Give me a second. I take the candles off here because it's much easier to read the action on your entry. We're only using the 10-second for an entry here, so you can see we get up to the Crush It zone. I have the 9 SMA crossing the 20 right in here. So as soon as I get that cross here, this is where I am getting in on a starter position, is right here. Okay, and then once we get below the 50, this is where I usually add to the position, and then I'll start scaling out, roughly right around the 0.618. Lately I've been trying to hold this down to the 0.382, or the 0.382, and then down to the zero line, just because once you break that bottom Crush It zone, usually you're going to get to the 0.382. It's very rare that you'll stop out at the 0.618, and a lot of times the 50 SMA here is at the 0.618 already, so you don't really get a big move. All right, and like I said, we're trying to get our winning trades to pay for the losing trades, the ones we get stopped out on. In order to do that, we really need to kind of hold for a little longer. So like I said, I've always taught that we should be scaling out at the 0.618, especially if you're in a small account. Now, if you're in a small account and you only have 1 or 2 contracts, you don't have really the ability to hang on to the trade very long, because if it does reverse, it could reverse in a heartbeat and you could lose your small account. So when you're developing or building your small account, you kind of want to take your profits early instead of hanging on too long. Now, there's some occasions where you can hang on if you got big momentum in your direction and you want to try to hang on. But the whole idea of building a small account is to get those profits little by little for the first couple of weeks, so you can get 2 contracts and then you can start hanging on to that extra contract for the next level down. All right, so there is the Crush It zone trade on Apple that happened yesterday. Not a bad trade. I did not take it. I'll get into the ones we took here in just a second. But Apple moving into the day here, I do have these ranges marked out here. I have the 50 coming in, 50 SMA. We're below the 100. I've been waiting for the 100 day. A couple days ago, I took a trade to the downside here. We did very well on that one. You check out the videos from a couple days ago if you want to see about the 100 break day. But usually when we break the 100, we usually are going to see the 200. Okay, and so what I'd be looking for today on Apple is possibly, if it wants to do it, we could get a pop and then a fade down to this 200. I don't know if it's going to happen today, but we'll watch it. It's not going to be number 1 on my watch list, but definitely going to be watching Apple for a possible pop and fade. If not, we could get this move to the upside also. We'll just have to see what the markets want to do here today. So that is Apple. AMD hit the Crush It zone. This is one that I tried to take yesterday. It was either Apple or AMD. I chose AMD. It's usually the one that I trade more often. So we took this one here. Yeah, didn't make a whole lot. I think $100 or something like that on this one here. I think we had like 5 or 6 contracts on it. I don't remember exactly. Let me get to this one here. See, the first one was, right in here at, I think we took it at about 950, wasn't it? Once again, let me take the candles off here so you can see the moving averages just a little bit better. A little bit choppy, you guys. So we ended up getting out of this trade. We did get I think the move down to the VWAP here. Let's see if we can find this. I think our entry was right in here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was right in here. We had the crossover. This was right here. Took a starter position, scaled out of that starter position in here. Actually, we hung on for a little bit and then just took it from there. It ended up going up, stopping out. But here's where AMD gets interesting, okay? So I kind of got a little bit early. Wasn't excited about the price action. I don't think we entered in early. I think it was a good entry. We definitely have a good entry. You have a good ad spot here, but you can see the 9 here in this ad spot here. It's got to get below the 360, and the 360 is showing bullish. We want to get the 360 below the 360 EMA has got to get below the 360 SMA. And you can see price just kind of grinds higher. And here's where we get the crossover right here. And now it turns into a bearish sediment, okay, on the 10-second here. So we're not at the crusher zone, we're above it. So usually I don't like to enter into these unless this formation on the moving average is right at the crusher zone. And I'll show you a couple here that did set up yesterday. But this ends up grinding to the downside here. And here is where you get a nice formation right here for the move to the downside. You see you got the fold over the 9 over the 20. We break, and here's the retest right there. That's the retest that we look for in that 50 SMA. And it go ahead and it continues down for the rest of the day. And that would have been a really good move on AMD if you're really focused in on it. Now, the problem with focusing in on these trades, you guys, it's really not the mechanics of the setup. It's more us, the psychological ability to stay in the trade or to focus in on it and wait for the setup to take place. But I know what happens is we tried to trade it, it didn't work the way we wanted to, and what we do is we just move on to other things, and then we end up having a no trade day because we really didn't give the ticker our full attention. Okay, so I think AMD eventually could have been a good trade for the day if you really wanted to hang out with it and work with it. It did kind of take place more or less the time that I don't trade anymore, so I'm usually not trading after 11, so that's why I probably wouldn't have gotten this one anyways. But it's good to know if you're one of the traders that likes to sit here for half the day or all day long, stay tuned into these these trades, these strategies, these setups, because eventually they're going to mostly pan out. Okay, Microsoft was also a good one. Well, let me back up here. What am I looking at AMD for the day? So AMD, you can see I had this wedge formed yesterday. We did get below that wedge. We retested it. And so we could be seeing a move to the downside here today. And if this happens also, I'd be looking for this, move to the downside here, break, and then we have this trend line I have marked right out here. So that's what I'd be looking for on AMD for a possibility. So we'll keep that up on our watch list. All right. So let's move on to Microsoft. Microsoft had a crush its own trade, a pretty decent one. Didn't trade this one either. It didn't take place once again until about 10:30, 11, and I was kind of done trading for the day. I gave it my best shot. Was up very small green yesterday. And like I said, I had stuff to do in the afternoon, so I wasn't around for this one here. But we'll take a peek at it. I'll show you exactly what happened here on Microsoft. So Microsoft, you come up, you hit the crush it zone, right? Here's the crush it zone. We got 1, 2, 3 taps on it before it makes that move to the downside. And here it is, move to the downside. What I like about this one here is now you have the 360 SMA just crossed below the 360 EMA. So that cross right there is a good indication that we're going to go bearish. We get the retest at the crush it zone. This is a perfect A+ setup on Microsoft, and then you get that nice move to the downside. Let me get rid of the candles here so you can see how the moving average is set up. Oops, wrong one. And here it is here. Right, you get the 20 cross. So here's your entry, right? And then here is where you're going to confirm that trade. You're going to add to the position, and then you're going to start scaling out. And like I said, I've been holding off my scales. And actually, let me do this on the 1 minute so you can see. And let me add the 0.382 in here. There it is right there. So I've been waiting and not scaling here at the 0.618, but I've been trying to hold here to the 0.382. I just noticed statistically that, you know, you're most likely going to hit the 0.382, so why not hang tight with it, right? Unless we had VWAP at 0.618, I might consider it, but for the most part, you got VWAP down here also, so I think this is a good scale position. And then you'll take your next one at the 0 line, and then you can save your trailers if you have more than 3 or 4 contracts. You can save one for bigger moves to the downside. If price moves back up above the 382, then you're going to be stopped out of the trade. But you can see if you want to hang on and babysit for the rest of the afternoon, you do have some continuation of the downside. So Microsoft, I thought, was a pretty clean A+ setup. Okay. Going into today, I don't really day trade Microsoft for the most part, even though yesterday had a great trade. But you know, we'll just wait and see. If we get another crush zone trade on Microsoft, maybe a possibility. But that's all we have on Microsoft. I'll tell you guys, the thing about the crush it trading strategy, and you guys know this, is a get up and go strategy. You know, you don't have to spend hours trying to figure out where levels are and all that. Even though it helps, you know, I would still recommend checking out key levels. And obviously, it's going to help you with your crush it trading system. But I'm just saying, if you just rolled out of bed and you were watching the Mag 7, and that's what you were doing, and you only played the crush it trade strategy, even if you didn't do any other work, you're going to get about a 70 to 80% win rate most of the time on 3 tickers that we trade on these on this strategy. Okay, so here's Amazon. Amazon, we don't get really a playoff of Amazon. On the crush zone, it does happen later on in the day. 1250, I wouldn't be here even looking at it, even though it's probably a stop out trade. You can see this one does get to the 0.618, but there's always indicators in here that are going to let us know if it's not going to make it. And here's one of them here. You do get above the 50 SMA, but we get blocked right here at the 360 where it continues to the downside. And you can see that the 360 EMA is above the SMA, which is showing that we have some strength in here, and it just crossed over. So you're showing we got some strength, but it just doesn't work out. So, all right, that is Amazon. I do got a new signal that I've been working on, the SPY signal here. So it looks like it's been working pretty well. I'm not going to trade it for quite a while. I'm just going to leave it on my charts for probably a few months and just kind of monitor it, keep track of the data, see how often, what the percentages are that it does actually work. So what I'm saying is, if you see this on my charts, this buy now, don't jump into the trade. Like I said, that's just a test, beta test there. NVIDIA, I thought NVIDIA had a really great play yesterday too. This kind of knocked me out yesterday a little bit because we had this really quick trade off the crush it zone, and I'm generally used to trading the crush it zones the first time they hit. And, we didn't get this one really. It was kind of choppy. Once again, I was telling you, if these hit really early, this is at 936, the IV is still kind of high on them, and the IV starts to drop until about 9:45, 10 o'clock. Even if it's just a couple points, you're kind of fighting against your premiums there. So I like to wait till at least after 9:45 to take these trades. But, that was a good trade to the upside here. You can see that if you'd have got into it, even though with the IV, you had a really nice trade to the upside, and I didn't get it. I wish I would have, but I didn't. And another one, even better yet, I think we had a nice crush it zone trade at the top. And because it had already hit down below, once again, I don't really feel comfortable taking it the second time around. But hey, here's the deal. It's all psychological, because at the end of the day, the charts don't understand what you're thinking or feeling. It just knows it hits the crush it zone, and if your setup takes place, you take it, okay? And here we have it on NVIDIA. Same thing, we get into the crush it zone here. Look on the 10-second. We get into the crush it zone. We have, bullish momentum here on the 360s. And here we go. This is exactly what we're looking for. So I am going to call this an A+, even though I got a little nervous and didn't even take it myself. So here you go. Nice fold over here. You got a nice starter position here, all at the 50. And you get this nice move to the downside. And right here, when it crosses below the 360, you get that nice 360 cross, everything turns bearish. It's giving you all the confidence you need to stay in the trade, and eventually it just goes down. And this was by far one of the better trades. This would have been a really well-paying trade. You could have made a lot of money on this one here if you had gotten into NVIDIA. Now, what this strategy really comes down to is just concentrating in on it and playing that one or two stocks, them tickers, and just waiting for the right setup and getting up to the plate and swinging. Okay, I know in the group here a lot of times people are hesitating, and if you hesitate, you're not going to get the trade. So just stay focused. Stay focused in. I think the strategy is easy enough to learn. We just have to psychologically fix our mind to not hesitate to get into these trades. Worst case scenario, you get stopped out, right? Meta was the trade that we were looking for yesterday earlier. It came later in the day. I was looking for this break. I had set this zone up here, and we did get it later in the day. Oh well, it didn't work out, and that's just the way it goes sometimes. But we didn't have a trade for continuation, nor did we have a crush it zone trade yesterday on Meta. But this would have been a good trade to the downside also had this happened earlier. This happened at about 11:45. Noonish. I was already gone for the day, so didn't take that trade. But you can see right here, you do get the 360 cross. I have a sell arrow in here. I don't know if you can see this or not. On the 10-second, it's very small. I got this sell arrow in here that we're getting ready for a sell position, and it does break, and we're waiting for it to break below the 20. It does break below the 20. We get this channeling in here. You get your retest back to the 50, and this is your entry spot right here for that move to the downside. Okay, you would have not gotten stopped out, so you got that re-entry there. So that was a really good move to Meta to the downside. Going into today, looking at Meta, I think if we go bearish, I'll be looking for a move to the downside here, retest here, and a move to the downside, and we'll see how that aligns with possible the crush it zone. So if we get the crush it zone in there too, that's going to really help us out. So if we get the crush it zone down in here today, we could probably expect a good retest for this ascending trend line I have here for continuation of the downside possibly. Another one we would have here possibly too is if we open below this today and maybe pop up, retest this, and have a move higher too. But I'd be looking more for the bearish move on Meta today. Once again, if we get it early, great. If it comes after 12 o'clock, most likely won't be able to get in on that trade. So Tesla. We did get a crush it zone trade on Tesla also. It's more towards the end of the day. I would have never gotten in it, but look at how choppy. Most likely would have never taken it, but it is a crush it zone trade. As far as keeping track of the data on this, you do count these as winning trades. This is a far side crush it zone all the way up to VWAP. And, Tesla plays very, very well. So this is one of those tickers, you guys, where, I say, I would wait till the 0.382 to get out. But if you're on Tesla or Meta, these small moves here from one side of the zone to the other pay very well. There's a $2 move. Even if you'd have gotten in right here at the crush it zone, right up here to the 20, that's a $2.52 move right there. I don't know how well you can see this. It's kind of small. Sorry about that. But it happens later in the day, but we count this data. So this data counts. And that is a viable move. It's really nice. And if you look at the tickers here, at the 1 minute and the 10-second, you can see the same thing. We got this crossover here on the 360, breaks it, retests, and you get this nice move to the high side. So, I'm sorry. Let me back up. This was actually I'll get to that one here in just a second. This was the 50% of the gap zone here. So I was expecting a bounce off of this yesterday. I did not take this one here, but here it is right here. I was going to talk about this. Sorry about that. Here's your 50% of the gap zone. We get that nice retest bounce. Here it is. I get a nice buy now signal at this, and you get this retest of the 10-second for the move higher. The 360s do turn bullish. You can see we get the break and the retest in here. We get that bullish signal, and it moves up from there. Once again, these smaller moves on Tesla pay very, very well. So this move right here is a $7 move on Tesla. I would take that all day long. Even though the bigger move is to the downside, I would take 25% of that $7 all day long. All right. Let me see if I can move over here now in the 10-second. Let's show you this move here on the crush it zone, which is right in here at the end of the day. You can get a buy now signal on that one. And that's why these buy now signals and sell now signals were developed, is to help us with the crush it zones. So let's see here. A little bit ambiguous here, but let's see. So we get this one here roughly at about 15.15. I don't take them, Amir, but I'm just showing you guys that, you know, some of you guys like to sit here all day and trade. Sometimes you come back to the end of the day. So I basically was just showing you that, you know, at the end of the day they do work. I don't trust them, but, you know, the data shows that they work. Even though I don't trust them, I probably should, because it is a good strategy and it works most of the time. So I just don't trade them before or after 11. But yeah, I suppose, I mean, they could. Plenty of you guys have traded them in the past. But here you go. You got your 9 breaking the 20. You get above the 50. Here it is. It consolidates a little bit, and you get that move to the upside there. So that's Tesla. Moving into today on Tesla, I want to show you one more too after this one. So you can see, you know, we're in the pre-market. We're trying to fill that gap zone. So we got a couple different situations going on in here in Tesla today also, which I think is worth watching. Either A, we're going to hit this and bounce up. I don't like this one here because we could get this, you know, just these random moves like this in here. I would much rather see this break. I want to see a retest here for a move down to the 241 and 242 level right in here. So that would be on the watch list today for Tesla. What would be nice is if, you know, we do break and we get a crush it zone that lines up with this here. That's going to give us a little bit more confidence in taking the trade to the downside. But if it does range trade, we'll see what happens. May take one in the crush it zone. If we pop up and we get a crush it zone down here for a move to the upside, then most likely we'll end up taking Tesla to the upside also, if everything sets up appropriately. Mr. Twister, MSTR, MicroStrategies. Actually, I'm sorry, PLTR, Palantir. I'm gonna bypass MSTR for today. Didn't really have anything on it yesterday. I decided I'm gonna do Palantir because it had a nice crush it zone trade. This is an A+ crush it zone trade. You have right here the zone. We're deep outside the Bollinger Bands. You have 2 candles fully outside the Bollinger Bands on the 5. Right. We have a nice move here. Nice clean touches on the 1 minute. And if you look at that on the 10-second, let's check this out. And the time on it, you guys, is 9:46-ish, roughly. Your full position would have came in at 9:48. Still a little bit early. Let me get rid of these candles right here so you can see this. Here is your moving averages. You can see how everything is bearish here on this side of the Bollinger Bands. This is pretty typical. Class A+, classic setup right here. Here is your... Let me get this set up here. Here's your entry, right? Here's your full position right in here, right there. And a lot of times before, I was telling you guys, we were scaling right here at the 0.618. If you can hang on to the 0.382, if you have the courage to do it and not trim, that tends to pay a little bit better. And then you have another scale up here at the 0 line, and you can see that you get a couple more. One more move to the upside, and one more little push on that one. But that is a really good move on Palantir, and this one here was worth $4. That's a $4 move on Palantir. Now, obviously, I usually multiply that by 0.7 or 0.6 because you're not going to get the full move. But you guys, these crush it zones set up every single day. on the Mag 7 tickers that we trade at least once. And then I have a couple side chart ones, ARM, PLTR, MSTR. They'll set up on those. So, hey, if you want to learn the crusher trading strategy, check us out. Check out the links below. And if you guys here in the room, just remember, don't hesitate. You have a 70 to 80% chance of winning these, and you know which ones not to get into. We've talked about these in the past on that 10 seconds, so it's really going to up your probability, all right? We have the market open here in about 30 minutes. I'm going to get prepped up for market, and if you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you here